So we have a sermon in 3 parts today. The sermon will be, the 3 participants will be Jody Palmer. I'm sorry, Jody, I lost your bio and my email mass, so if you could introduce yourself when you come up, I'd appreciate it. Shelley Glassrud, did I pronounce it right? Yeah, okay. She's been a longtime member for 24 years. From an early age, she felt a deep connection with food and cooking. And hers is a story of her creative journey. We also have, I lost it. We have, sorry, Rich. Rich is a longtime member of our congregation too, a former professor in child development and family relations, a family therapist, and a photographer. And he's grateful for being part of the UU community. So with that, we will listen to this sermon in 3 parts. Jody?
Good morning. And good morning out there. I'm Jody Palmer, and I think maybe what I sent in was I joined when we were first beginning to think about building this church. And I was recruited by Babs Eskin to be part of the design committee. And it was an amazing process. So what you're sitting in today is the result of a lot of our hard work. So I'm delighted to be here and to explore the theme of creativity. I believe each of us has creative genes in our DNA, and the expression of it is part of what makes each of us unique and part of who we are. I will enjoy reading your Post-it notes at the end of the sermon, at the end of the day. So I might call this talk Personal Lessons on the Creative Process. In my creative life, I had an encounter which was life-changing. In my 40s, after raising a family as my primary job, I was trying to find another identity as a mom, other than mother. I had been studying the Enneagram. If you're not familiar with the Enneagram, it is a system which identifies 9 personality types, 9 styles of attention, which is very helpful in understanding oneself and understanding one's relationships with others. None of the 9 types is any better or worse than the other. I attended a seminar on the Enneagram during this period. The seminar leader was a type 6, as I am. So on a break, I went up to her and I asked, "Do 6s have trouble knowing who they are?" And she answered right away, "6s know who they are, they just talk themselves out of it." This personality type has a lot of self-doubt. A light bulb turned on. I could observe myself thinking, "You're too old, it's too much school, you won't be good enough." So once I recognized that, I started classes at UC Berkeley in landscape design, and I got a job at a local nursery. I was living on adrenaline for several years, working to learn all I could about plants. Often, The most creative solutions come out of the most challenging problems. Sometimes when I'm introduced to someone's outdoor space, I register a quiet panic. How can this space be transformed into something beautiful and workable? I've learned to take several deep breaths. I've learned to trust that answers will come and to let the answers unfold, to be open to let the space speak. Another observation. The process of creating a garden has a spiritual component. Mother Nature gives freely and unconditionally, and with exquisite beauty. It is one's natural response to want to give back to the universe for its gifts so freely given. And gardening is a humbling experience. I can't just do anything. It reminds me of my place. I must work within the givens of nature. Soil content, sun, shade, heat, cold, water, seasons, plant needs, time. Within that humbling context comes the joy of playing with textures, shape, space, layers, colors. Have you ever noticed how many shades of green there are? So, lessons from the process. Believe in yourself. Trust your instincts and intuition. Study and learn all you can about what interests you. Solving a problem often leads to a creative solution. Allow time. Do your homework. Trust that answers will come. Pay attention. What is the environment telling me? And lastly, register the joy that comes from each creative effort.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a cook by choice. A lot of people aren't. For me, there's almost nothing better than making food for people, especially my friends, my family, and sometimes my church family, and sometimes with my church family. I have fun creating events with food at the center. Cooking is my love language, and I am fortunate to have had more than one inspiration in my life for my version of creativity. I was a child who happily ate all kinds of food. I never understood picky eaters. I still don't. I had a single mother who worked 2 jobs with 4 hungry children under the age of 7. My mother gave us the gift of fresh fruits and vegetables. In the late 50s and early 60s, fresh fruits and vegetables were the cheaper way to eat, though many people I knew ate canned vegetables and worse, canned entrees and TV dinners. We shopped at Tony's Produce on McKinley and Maple, a mom and pop stand where they knew us by name. My mom bought lugs of fruit, not just like a few pieces of fruit. She bought lugs of fruit. We ate fruit for dessert, not cookies. Still hungry, she would say? Have a peach. She created fruit crisps and cobblers for special occasions and taught herself to make meals that did not require a whole lot of meat, like delicious soups, Japanese vegetables dishes, chili beans, and the best real macaroni and cheese made from scratch with sharp cheddar cheese and fresh breadcrumbs on top. While my friend down the street was eating Chef Boyardee Franco-American spaghetti from a can, my mom was making mouth-watering spaghetti with a meat sauce from scratch with a simple side of zucchini and a vinaigrette salad. With homemade dressing. Yeah, never a bottled dressing in our house. I watched her as she made our nightly meals with fresh ingredients and love. Mom had a huge influence on my culinary future. At 4 years old, while my siblings were in school and my mother working, I'd run next door to my babysitter, a Jewish Holocaust survivor who it seemed worked perpetually in her kitchen on all kinds of interesting dishes I wouldn't normally have encountered in my young life. I became a fan of her matzo ball soup, matzah crackers with butter smeared on top, and chopped chicken liver. But my absolute favorite was her kreplach, a type of dumpling filled with ground meat and onions simmered in a rich chicken broth. At that time, I believed someday I would make my own kreplach. After all, I watched her closely at each step. I knew what the ingredients were. I would make kreplachs too someday. I learned so much from her, even though I was so very young. How could I not be inspired by her? While in college, I waited tables in 2 Valley restaurants that were top of the line. Many of you may have heard of them. Both were small and family owned. Both had everything, I mean everything, made from scratch. Both had incredible food with menus that were varied and unusual for the 70s and 80s. Finney's Ristorante in Visalia and Vallis's restaurant in Kingsburg, both long since closed. I learned by observing and asking questions, and going home and making dishes similar to that. And eventually, I started a catering business specializing in dinner parties, and I worked alongside Chef Roy Harland at his restaurant. Later, I became a classroom teacher where I would work a few cooking projects into the curriculum when I could and when it made sense. I was with my husband, Don, for over 40 years. And we regularly joked that we were too busy celebrating our relationship with dinners, and that was why we had a hard time losing weight. Don loved the food I prepared for him. He appreciated the thought, planning, knowledge, and creativity it took to make many of the dinners that he so enjoyed. He inspired me to cook. Love does that. When I became a mother, it was important to me that when my daughter looked back on her childhood food, her thoughts would be of homemade, fresh, healthy, and delicious food around the dinner table. Not fast food, not Happy Meals, real food. No surprise, Erin is a great cook, and she cooks just like she was raised. Motherhood inspired me to make that happen. I have embraced cooking in my life. It comes naturally to me. It gets my creative juices flowing. Often, it's how I relax. It's what I love, and I'm so fortunate to have had so many inspirations on my journey with food. I still haven't made kreplach, but I plan to. Recently, I looked up the recipe for the first time. It was exactly how I remembered it would be. Thank you.
Good morning. I don't know about you, but I'm still kind of sitting in Jody's garden, and I have a plate of Shelley's mother's spaghetti was zucchini and a little salad. Oh, it's good. Well, my journey of creativity actually started when I was a child, old enough to walk to my mother's favorite vanity, wherein I stored toys. And above the toy storage were glass doors that I could open, and inside were painted glasses, painted with animals that my aunt had done. And I would take the monkey out, and I would take the lion out, and I would have them play with my toys. It was wonderful. I found myself exploring that world freely, without inhibitions, without guidance, without direction, just letting it flow from within. Later, I even had the novel idea of taking my mother's piano bench, which had a round circle at the top that she could sit on, and it swiveled. And I would get that bench, and I would sit down on a chair, and the bench became the steering wheel for my bus. And I would turn the bus through this curve and through that curve, and I would stop the bus with my foot and let people off and back on. And then on I would go with my bus. This creative process is part of all of our lives. As a child, you add a new word to a song that you've learned, and it's your word, and it has become your song. You have created it. As I matured, my creativity often led me to question, to push boundaries, to think differently than the authorities were telling me was the truth, to challenge, to ask why. And it did get me in trouble. I remember a religion class going up with a classmate who was going to ask the teacher a question. I was standing beside the classmate as the teacher had his roll book open. And this has been someone a teacher that I'd challenged with questions and wondering. And next to my name, I saw the words, Smart Aleck. I knew my grade was threatened. I also experienced the creativity of imagination. I can be in my home and imagine being at the beach and hearing the waves and walking in the sand. I can imagine being by a stream in the Sierras. My mother, as I was growing up, would always draw my attention to that which was in the world we were passing through. Look at that tree. Look at the colors over there. Isn't that an interesting person? With that observation of the world around me, I believe I developed a photographer's eye. Finally, curiosity played a significant role in me becoming a part of this congregation. I moved from rigid thinking to open-mindedness. I moved from conventional religious thought that I was raised with to the exploration of new ideas. Are you ready for this? I moved from having the answer to a voice of ambiguity and uncertainty to experimentation. What freedom! Like my child self going to play in the cupboard, I want to explore uncharted territories. Maybe we can do it together.